and welcome everybody to our glorious Alpha 2 roadmap and AMA showcase. We hope that you've been having a wonderful couple weeks. We get to see you a little earlier than normal. Normally it's a week, a full month that goes by. But of course, I'm your director of communications, Margaret Crone, and with me as always is our creative director, Stephen Sharif. How you doing?
Woo! I'm doing good. How are you doing?
The chat, well, everyone's concerned about your PC dying and
Dude, oh my gosh, it was terrible. This morning I was at home, I was getting ready, reading through the questions in the AMA, and the webcam broke. And so I went and grabbed another webcam, plugged that in, and that webcam broke. And I was like, what is going on? And so I texted you. I was like, I'm running to the office. You need to give me
he was
15
he
minutes.
was texting me pictures of him driving, and I was like, dude, don't text me while you're driving. He's like, it's okay, John's driving. I was like, oh my gosh, crazy man. But we won't delay any longer. We'll get right into it. Of course, today we are talking about our roadmap. There's a lot to do here today. We're going to be
Yes, I
going over
know.
our goals as a team here at Intrepid Studios, the roadmap so you kind of know what the schedule is going to be for Alpha 2, content update cadence so you can know when we're going to be updating and what we're going to be updating, as well as what you can expect and what we need as a team from you guys. What features and systems that you can expect in each of the phases of Alpha 2. Now, these won't be like always at the start. It'll be all encompassing throughout the phases. You will see these things come online. Some of them will be at the start, some of them will be throughout. And then we will also go over details on when and how Alpha 2 Access will be coming available for purchase again, because we know that there's been a lot of people asking about it. And as you saw with our networking live stream, we've been making a lot of progress in order to be able to service more users.
And by the way, have we done a roadmap before in the past? I think a long time ago,
Not
20
with
like 18.
me, yeah, not with me. You might have done
Yeah,
one previously.
right. I remember. I
Actually,
think
you
it was when we
definitely
went.
did show a
It
bunch of
was.
dates previously. And I got here and I was like, Steven, we're wiping all of this.
I was like, Margaret, welcome. Here's all these dates that we talked
And I'm
about.
like,
And
we're
by the
not
way,
doing that.
it's looking shaky.
It's okay.
It was
But,
good times.
and I think that that's one of the things we are, we're humble about that. We know that there's been delays, there's things. And like we constantly always say to you, and you're going to see on these slides, is development is constantly moving,
Yes.
right? There's constantly things that come
Yes.
up. There's going to be stuff that comes up. And we've always been vocal about what those things are and why we've gotten delayed in those
Absolutely.
reasonings. Like we're never
As a matter
like, we're delaying and not giving you a reason why something is being moved.
And as a matter of fact, like on every slide you're going to see here, because this is going to be two parts, right? We're going to do the AMA eventually, but we're going to go through the slide, like Margaret said.
Hmm.
But every slide except for this one, I think at the bottom has this is still in development, work in progress, dates may change.
There you go.
That
Someone had work in progress on their bingo card. They're like, please say
oh,
it
we
at
got
least
it.
one time.
We got it.
I didn't have to say it. Stephen already said it. But we'll get right
Yeah, that's
into it.
right.
So let's talk first about our goals as a studio here at Intrepid Studios for Alpha 2. We are looking for scalability, stability, fun, and engaging with our community. Remember, the
Yes.
Alpha 2, this is not a game. We are here to test things. So the first thing here is that we're going to be able to, or we're going to try to support over 3K CCU per realm. Um,
Right.
yeah,
And by the way, scalability, stability, and fun in that order, right? That is how we're approaching right now, even testing, right? And today, actually, coincidentally, on the AMA day, we have a test with over 3,000 invited Alpha One users to participate in some stress testing, which I think starts at like 2 o'clock today, right, or somewhere around that time
yeah.
frame.
Well,
Yeah.
Stephen likes to share NDA
Oh
information.
shit. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, regardless, right now we are really in the testing of scalability. And that is going to be part of the first testing that's going to be available come October, and we'll get to the date in just a second. But as Margaret said, in that order, supporting over 3,000 CCU per realm. So what does that mean exactly, right? We're talking about how many active players at one time each of the realms are supporting. And we feel pretty confident in that number right now based on the testing that we're doing with our network team, with our ICS team. Things are going pretty well in that realm. The next step,
And that's
obviously,
not total, 'cause just so people have context, CCU is not total number of people on a realm. That is just
right.
like
That
the
is at one
concurrent,
time.
yeah, concurrency of how many people are on a realm. So there could be more than that as a far as accounts go that are on that
Yeah,
same
and s-
realm.
and something else to think about that CCU is that we also have a limited design space within which we can play, right? So, we'll go into a little bit of detail about, what that design space is going to look like in the game, per square kilometer. And then obviously that's going to expand. And as that expands throughout Alpha 2, we will be raising that 3K CCU per realm up as well, right? So we're going to start out at 3K CCU and then we're going to start moving forward.
And
What's
CCU
really,
is concurrent users because I think people are
I'm so
asking.
sorry.
It's okay.
There's gonna be perhaps some terminologies in here. Margaret will definitely help gut check me on that to explain stuff. But dynamic gridding, server meshing, IntrepidNet. We talked about that. I think it was a couple of streams ago. That is going to be active to allow us to support this 3K CCU at the start of Alpha 2. What's also important is that we're ensuring our realms and our clients don't crash, right? And so that is something that right now we're going through. It obviously is, you take one bug down, you pass it around, and now there's 100,000 bugs on the wall.
We're
And,
getting better at it. We're getting rid of them. Alpha 1 was definitely even more during the pre-alpha phase. So we're getting there.
Mhm. And remember, that 3K CCU, our goal and what we feel very confident in achieving once we have expanded that design play space for Alpha 2 is to get to that 8 to 10,000 CCU per realm. So ensuring that the realms and the clients don't crash, that is of great importance. That is the
And
stability factor of it. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to bring up the fact that like we actually haven't had a ton of realm crashes actually in all of our testing that we've been doing so far. It's been
Yes,
more client crashes and server worker crashes. So the reason why we're using the term realm is because we have another system. If you watched our networking network meshing live stream, where we have a bunch of like mini servers that are
server workers.
yeah, server
Yes.
workers that are running, and those
Yeah.
all tie into one larger realm.
Everybody has their own blend of vernacular that they use as it pertains to
People were just
either
asking in
their.
chat, and I don't think
Yeah,
everyone has context, so I was giving a little, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So ensuring that the realms and the clients don't crash, and if they do, and this is the important part, having them fail gracefully, right? And that's something that we're able to identify as we're doing this NDA testing right now, and hopefully we get that to a very good place by the time we start the non-NDA testing, because that's not. Although it is going to happen, we want to mitigate it as much as possible. So outside of stability, the next goal, obviously, is to deliver a next generation MMORPG that is focused around systems. Our game is a systems focused game, and a lot of what's in entrance of Alpha 2 pertains to those systems. Obviously, we have an audience that's hungry for some high quality experiences and services. But remember, Alpha 2 is not a completed game. It is not an early access game. This is an alpha, which means that as part of this playtesting, that people who are participating, they are giving us data that we can act upon, both from a game iteration perspective, but as well as a stability and scalability perspective as well, right? And those are our focuses. Um, and lastly, and this is something that we're going to do throughout all of our testing for Alpha 2, is that we're going to build ashes with our audience, right? And that is what we have been doing over the course of the last several years, as at least relates to our development updates, right? We have been doing this in a very show and tell. Here's our progress towards these features, towards this content. You give us your thoughts. Now it's going to be more tactile. Now you're going to be in game with us, with GMs, with the developers. We're going to be a little bit more vocal in Discord with you, not just me, but some of our other developers who are actually responsible for the development of these features in game. And they're going to hear directly from players and have an opportunity to digest that feedback, bring that feedback to me, bring that feedback to the team, and act upon it, right? That is something that I think is probably most unique about this testing phase, and probably that you guys have never really experienced with any other project, at least of this size, when it comes to, the amount of money that's being invested to creating this game and the quality that we're trying to create this, the quality of our dev team, right? This is a big project now with over 200 200 developers. And this is not typically the standard approach that games take when it comes to developing these types of projects. So this last point is really something that we pride ourselves in doing. This is something that we feel is really unique for the industry. And we want to continue to do it and step up what that means, which means we show you what we do, we discuss why and how we're going to do it, and most importantly, we're going to talk with our players. Literally talk with our players, whether that be in Discord voice chat, whether that be in Discord text chat, on forums, whatever, all the avenues possible, you're going to see our team engaging, and that's something that's most important.
Yeah, and we've
The
already
last
been doing a lot of that too. If you haven't been part of our office hours, our wonderful community managers run that, and it is wonderful. It's something that is very unique. I have not seen other companies do that. We sit and actually talk with you. We
Oh
listen
yeah.
to you. We write that down. We record that, and we bring that back to our team in a like consolidated report that they can then consume, which
And
is really
you know what?
handy.
It's been really rewarding to so just to give you guys context, the way that we're kind of performing our current stress testing is obviously we have these, thousands of A1 testers right now that we've given invites to that are participating in the testing. And in the studio, we have our war room, right? We call it our war room, right? Where all the devs who are part of facilitating the test and administering the test, the devs responsible for observing the test and reacting to the issues that are, we're all in this war room together. And
We
then
have
at the
comms where
same
we're like, "War
time,
room,
I know,
this problem is
we have
going
call
on."
we have call signs, right? Where it's like Maverick, this is War Room, this is Sandman Command, like Viper Command or whatever. It's actually hilarious. But we're also on the flip side of that coin having our Discord open with all of those testers, with those tester groups, with hundreds of people in voice channel, and we break up devs into different channels with the hundreds of players that we're administering these tests to currently. And it's a lot of fun. And it's also a lot of fun to hear the devs get to enjoy the players enjoying what they have built, what they have brought to life. That is something that is unique, and it's just been rewarding to observe. So, kudos to the testers, kudos to the team. I know that this is very enjoyable for both parties, but there's a lot more where that came from. So, to hit on this last point, Intrepid is not under pressure from publishers, right? And what does that mean exactly? As a player, you may not understand what that relationship can sometimes entail between a developer, first party developer, and a third party publisher, or vice versa. There are certain dates that are required to hit, and whether or not the product is ready, sometimes those dates occur. And that's the type of pressure that we are not going to succumb to. Now, what does that mean for you guys? Unfortunately, to some degree, it means that there's a higher potential for delays, right? Because our focus is on the quality of the product, on the quality of the experience, and on the quality of the data that we want to receive from these testing periods. That is paramount to us. And because that is paramount to us, we are more willing and able to tell you that we're going to have to delay something, and we're okay with failing. We actually embrace failure. Excuse me. We embrace failure. And the reason why we embrace failure is because the faster you fail, the faster you can correct that failure
As
and
long as
move
you
forward
learn
to a
from those
success.
failures, we don't embrace
Uh,
failure that you don't learn from.
no, of course not. Yeah, I've always said I'm okay with what do I say during the dev meetings? I'm okay with different shit, just not the same shit. Like, so I mean that's generally what I mean by that, right? Is that we learn from the failures that we're willing to embrace. And we fail fast because we need to be able to react to those failures in a way that is positive, that benefits the product, that the players can see and understand. That is something that matters. In addition, we are using our own technology and our own support services, right? We are developing these systems in-house, not just the game, but the way we're delivering the game from the launcher's perspective, the way that we're administering the account services, the way that we're administering our web portal and publishing platform, the way that we are creating all of these ancillary services in order to support um, to support the game that we are launching. So keeping that in mind, that obviously our commitment is in actually creating an MMORPG that's going to make you guys proud. So with that being said, no, we have not delayed beyond October. We already announced that October is going to be the month just 2 weeks ago. And October is when the NDA will be lifted and A2 testers will all be invited on the 25th.
We're ready to move to the next one.
Oh, yes. I apologize.
All
I thought I
right,
thought I,
here
I
we
thought
go.
you were moving with me. Okay. So, Alpha 2. How is Alpha 2 going to work? Obviously, we talked about our NDA testing that we're doing now, right? These are day-long tests essentially that we are doing with our Alpha 1 users who were most active during the Alpha 1 period, who gave us good actionable feedback, and that is the expectation that we have for Alpha 2 testers as well. So October 25th, we will start with our phase 1 of Alpha 2 testing. Phase 1 is going to consist of weekend-long tests that run from Friday to Sunday and will occur every weekend moving forward until phase 2 begins. And do we want to talk, Margaret, a little bit about like how we're going to be administering these tests, how players will get notices of these tests, and um, the type of support that we're going to offer them from a community perspective during these tests as well?
Yeah, so we will be contacting people through email. So for those of you who have been joining us already for our pre-alpha 2 testing, you've been getting emails from us, and that is how we will contact you. We also will have a private Discord for the private people, but for this one, obviously, these will be more. Um, you won't be under NDA, so you'll be able to talk about your experience. But we will have some forums for you to access. We'll have some Discord spaces for you to access that will only be with those users so that you can communicate with your friends as well as with us. And we will be kind of ensuring that you're kept up to date on what things are coming along the lines, patch notes, details. Some of that will be posted on our news post as well. It kind of just depends on what the information is and where it needs to be shared and who needs to have access to that information. But we'll definitely
Yes.
keep you guys as much in the loop as far as customer service support. Uh, Alpha 2 is an alpha. This is like an actual alpha. We are not like a game where it's like we're just porting over or translating to another region. This is like a proper alpha. So, as Stephen has stated
Yes.
many times, it's not a game. We are here to test and get things moving along. And as you can see here, what our testing goals are as we continue forward. The game will become more of a game as we go through Alpha 2. But what that means also is that we will not be providing the same level of support we would for launch. So for launch, we will have in-game GMs who are assisting you, and we'll have a lot more things where we can help you if you get stuck on a quest line. But
Yes.
for Alpha 2, that is not going to be the case. If you get in a broken state, we won't be fixing your characters in the same way that we would later down the
And
line.
And the important thing to note about phase 1 between these weekend tests is going to be that our goal is not to wipe persistence, right? When we talk
Correct.
about the progress that you make between these weekends as a player character, now
We may.
within each phase, there is a higher likelihood the earlier the phase that persistence will have to be wiped. We won't know for certain whether or not we have to wipe persistence between these testing dates, between these testing weekends, until we come across an issue that might require us to do so, right? So that's something to keep in mind, right? As part of what Margaret was talking about, these testing, the Alpha 2 testing parameters we're focused around, again, that stability, that scalability, the performance, and progression as well. So for phase 1, those are the test goals. And what that means for us is obviously we're going to prioritize what's necessary in order to accomplish those goals. And sometimes that might be wiping persistence. So we have to make sure that those of you who are, and everyone who has Alpha 2 obviously has access to all of these phases, but those of you who plan to play in phase 1, you will need to keep in mind that there is a much higher likelihood that persistence wipes can occur, that realm crashes will occur, that there will be a higher dispensity of client crashes that people may be suffering, right? This is going to be a little bit of walking before we start running. And that's something that's important. Now, also keep in mind that we are dedicated to this being an open, non-NDA platform, so people can see the progress that we are going to be having in Alpha 2. And Alpha 2 is continued development, right? We are going to be continually releasing additional content, features, systems as Alpha 2 progresses, and that includes within these phases. So there's going to be focuses that we will want people to have when it comes to what they're testing within a given weekend or a given week, or as we drop big content drops for the phase 3 24/7 alpha.
Yeah, and along with those things, you will see, surveys that may come your way. You will see forum posts where we're looking for feedback and we're compiling it. We may do office hours where we're trying to gather feedback on a specific topic. So you'll be seeing us interacting with you guys a lot on those things, as well as the community team will be running some events that may be revolved around some of these things, and we may pre-record those things and share them on our live streams down the line. So you will definitely be part of a bigger picture, and along those lines, we'll also have things where you may be voting on stuff where it's like, hey, which of these things do you guys like the most, or what of these things would you guys like to see next, right? So there may be places where you can actually be part of the development process in a bigger way.
Absolutely. So
Um,
let's talk a little bit about phase 2 real quick. This is where we're going to have planned week-long up times, right? And these are 5 days at a time with downtime on the in-between weekends. And that's starting December 20th. So yes, that will be a Christmas holiday playtime for people. I know obviously from a community perspective, that is something that is important, right? Because many of you guys will have time off. From a studio perspective, we will be bifurcating the development team into a live ops team to support, obviously, Alpha 2's continued live game service, but also the continued development for our expanded features and content systems. Um, test goals within these week-long tests are going to be node advancement, are going to be economy testing, and is going to be vassling between the node systems. This is something obviously that is important that we now start getting into more of the core gameplay loops, right? These are things like recipe compositions, balance between the different archetypes and the types of item creations that are possible, the resources that, how are they distributed within the world, and very importantly, node advancement. Obviously, the name of the game is nodes. Excuse me, the name of the game is Ashes of Creation. But in reality, it's nodes because this is how the world reacts and changes, and players are responsible for building those things up, right? So that is something to keep in mind as well. Phase 3. Phase 3 is going to be as we flesh out the world, expand the content and the features, and this will run until we reach beta. And this is 24/7 uptime. This is where the gameplay experience will be much better than what phase 1 and phase 2, at least as it relates to scalability and stability, right? We are going to have gotten out of the way a lot of the data collection, a lot of the iteration and reaction towards problems that we would have seen in phase 1 and phase 2. And this is going to provide players with now an opportunity, and really persistence wipes should not occur in phase 3 forward. Can they? Yes, they can. Should they? No, they shouldn't. But that is the reality. That is the dichotomy between playing the Alpha 2 and testing the Alpha 2. So keeping that in mind. This is going to be also where the world expands, right? The world is going to expand actually in phase 2 and phase 3 both. But phase 3 is where it will continually keep expanding until eventually we reach the world. So keeping that in mind.
Yeah,
As
because a lot of
always,
people want to know when the end is going to be. And it's
right.
like, yeah, we aren't going to provide that date because we want to ensure that we're hitting all the beats that we want as far as
And
like the
and and
content.
yeah, and we don't know when beta starts yet, right? Like the
Well,
most
internally
important thing.
we have a plan, but
Well, yeah, but what I mean by we don't know is to an epistemological certitude, right? No,
Mhm.
I'm just thinking, but like what I mean by that is testing can influence those dates
Yes,
in a
yeah,
very big way, right? So keeping in mind that what we learn from this testing, what we learn from phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 is going to inform how we iterate, how we respond, how we fix, and that can change things. So the further out you look, the more blurry the picture is, right? Keeping that in mind, right? The closer the goal, the more certain we can be about what we're going to hit.
And I
And
do want to bring up
that's
one
just a
more
symptom of game
thing
development.
before we move to the next slide, which is going to be about the cadence of our updates. Is that for those of you who have Alpha 1, I know some of you have been asking, like, why haven't I been selected yet? We have been continually increasing the people who are testing with us for pre Alpha 2. We will be expanding that to all Alpha 1 users at some point. But we are kind of just ensuring that everything on our end is in a good space, and we will continually add people. So you will be joining us before October 25th. Don't worry. But just kind of, wait until you get the email. We'll notify you guys. We've been messaging folks whenever we do send out those emails. So just kind of hang tight. If you might not get selected in the next one, but you may be selected in the one after that. And then we will be moving on to Alpha 2, which will be all of our Alpha 2 users, which not everyone who purchased Alpha 1 has access to Alpha 2.
Is that true?
Yeah,
Oh,
because some people didn't buy Alpha 2. They only had
uh,
a key or only purchased Alpha 1.
oh, okay. I didn't know that. But anybody who owns an Alpha 1 package like the Intrepid or I can't remember the name of the pre-order packages. Those all have the Alpha 2 access and Beta 1 and Beta
Yeah,
2
if your
access.
package has Alpha 2, then you are going to be an Alpha 2.
Exactly. Yes.
Moving on to cadence. Want to talk a bit about that, Stephen?
All right. Yes. So let's get into cadence. Um, so we have 3 cadences. We have, sorry, I can't see the slide very closely.
That's okay. As necessary, we are going to be doing our hot fixes and deploys for critical issues. And then
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Yes,
and
yes,
then
yes. Sorry
every
about that.
3 weeks, we will be moving into our minor releases. So these
I
are
lost I lost my place.
in the run of show.
Yeah, I know. I was like, wait a minute, where am I? So real quick, let's talk about hot fixes
Yeah.
deployed for critical issues. So as necessary, what that means is that if something is happening during a playtest that is either, causing some
It's a
game
major
breaking bug
crash. Yeah.
or crash to the server or a commonly experienced client crash, like we will be deploying hot fixes during that testing session. We'll be monitoring. We will have our developers on standby during the testing session to react and adapt. So that can happen at any time. And then in addition, we will have a 3-week cadence for minor version releases that include balance changes, that include major bug fixes, right? These are bugs that aren't necessarily critical to the function of the playtest itself, but are major nuisances for either a primary gameplay loop or player experience or interaction that we need to deploy. Balance changes are relatively easy for us to address. This probably won't be wide sweeping balance changes every 3 weeks, but it will be balance changes that we find are again interrupting certain gameplay loops and experiences that we want the players to have or collect data for. And then every 6 weeks, we will be releasing major version deployments. This means that it will either include new combination of new features, content, interactions that players are going to have either with one another, systems that players can interact with within the node system, or economy. Right? These are big feature and content releases that are going to happen every 6 weeks cadence, and that aligns with our internal development cadence. Right? Like every 6 weeks is essentially 3 sprints for us, right? And the general cadence of our sprints is we have feature and content development sprints 1, which is 2 weeks, and 2, which is another 2 weeks. That's a 4-week spread. And then we have a hardening sprint, which is another 2 weeks that usually prepares a release candidate for us.
It's
And
focused
this
on
is that.
polish and bug fixing type of things.
Absolutely, to make sure that this represents kind of, I mean, obviously when you develop a feature or content, you have these phases of development that first you approach it from a functional standpoint as you stand up the types of interactions that you want to see, the gameplay that you want to see, you move it into a testable format, which has a little bit more bells and whistles, a little bit more representative visual effects or animation or, content to it. And then you move into a playable state, which is something you would put into production or you would put out to the player that is externally facing. And generally during that hardening week, we are taking things from a testable state into a playable state, right? And that, like Margaret said, is addressing bugs, is addressing polish, so that it sells to the player what we're trying to sell, which is this fun and engaging gameplay loop. So that is our cadence that we have internally for development, and that is the cadence that we will be utilizing for the release update for the game. And at the very bottom, again, as always, development is a moving train and subject to change. So what we are going to be getting in here in the near future, in the next couple slides or so, is
Yeah.
going to be talking about what is in Alpha 2 Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 from a content and feature perspective. So we're going to talk about all these systems that we want players to engage with and that we want people to play, and for you guys to give us feedback on. But keep in mind that this release cadence that you see is a very agile system. Everything I just talked about with sprints and Scrum and, release candidates, that's all relates to this project management methodology that is under an agile umbrella. And the reason why it's called agile, as you can imagine, is because you need to be nimble and you need to be able to react and you need to be able to change directions and you need to be able to, do what is necessary for the product, for the community, for the success of the vision, so to speak. And that means that we need to be able to change these plans. So that's why sometimes it's difficult to give perspective about what our goals are. We have goals. We have internal roadmaps. We have a team of 20 producers that are constantly focused around making plans and identifying work and how long it's going to take to deliver this, and identifying dependencies that block different teams. And all of that is so that we can have our internal plans. But the reason that we have this backlog and prioritization and we adopt an agile project management structure is because we know and embrace that those plans have to change. So it's important from a community perspective. And this is something that I think content creators need to help us nail home, because again, this is an atypical development structure. This is not standard, but that's okay. Our goal is to do it in a non-standard way. We have to embrace this together, is that things can change. So development agility is an important thing. Let's talk about.
Yeah, let's move on to what you can expect versus what we need as a team.
Am I talking too much?
No, you're okay. We are being
I'm
slow,
just
but it's
like
okay.
stream of consciousness, go. Hopefully I'm making sense to people.
I think you're making sense.
Sometimes it gets too developy.
A lot of people are developers too, so they're in chat going like, "Oh my gosh, I'm on a break from my corporate
Speak
job,
to
and
me.
I'm now talking. Now you're
We're
making."
GDC. Okay. All right. Let's talk about what you can expect and what we need. What can you expect? Well, you can expect that we're in a testing phase. And that means that Ashes of Creation is not done. What does not done mean? It means that not everything's going to be polished. It means that you're going to experience bugs. It means that you're going to see systems that aren't fully fleshed out with content. It means that you're going to have areas of the world that need some TLC. It means that you're going to see variant NPCs with some placeholder behaviors and potentially ability systems. You're going to see skill trees that need to be completely rearticulated. You're going,
balance is not there, Yeah.
there is a whole host of shit, excuse me, that, pardon, a whole host of things that is not done yet. But does it do its job in conveying the intent of the gameplay loop? That's the question. And if it does do that job, then we can collect actionable feedback on how we want to iterate and finalize that loop. And that's the important part of Alpha 2, is to make sure that that is the
And that's
aspect.
that second line there, which is making sure that, we are testing those features and systems, and then we are getting critical feedback on that, and then we're reiterating on it.
Absolutely. Okay, let me see
We talked about
here.
this one a little bit earlier. I did mention that, the community will, like, we definitely want to engage with you guys. We have been this entire time. We want you guys to submit your feedback. We'll have a variety of ways for you to do that. And there will be ways for you to vote on features and content as well as we expand.
Yes, I see some people in chat saying 3 realms with each 3,000 concurrent users. No, no, no. We're going to get into talking a little bit about the number of realms. That number of realms is scalable. And again, this
It
was a
depends
very
on the
important part of
users.
our
Yeah.
network scaling. It is a very important part to understand that we can deploy additional realms
Hmm.
as necessary, right? That is a scalable solution. So as we need to do that, we will. Other points here. It is not meant to be viewed as done. It is meant to be tested and have critical feedback. We talked about that. The community will be able to engage by providing feedback and voting on features and content. Now, what does voting on features and content mean? Margaret, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I just did, but
Oh, shit, my
we could
bad.
talk about it again. It is, there will be cases where we provide you guys options. You may vote on them. I think recently a good example was, we asked everybody in the community, which do you prefer, B for backpack or I for inventory? And that was an interesting one where we consolidated all the feedback from all of our social platforms and we came back to the team and we're like, this is the most voted option, and so we swapped that and changed that in game. So maybe little things like that. Oh, they're already they're already doing it in chat now. We It could be
What
something
are they
like
doing?
that. It could be bigger pieces. It could be things where like
What
we're
was the question? Why are they saying tab and shift B?
B and I was what I had offered, but they're offering other options for bag or
Oh,
inventory. What
yeah.
their
What
hotkey
was
would
what
be.
was the outcome of the bagger inventory? I'm more of a B guy.
You're a B guy. I
What are
believe
you?
we trim. I can do either. It's like any game. Every game we do it different. So.
I can do either as well, but the question is, where does my finger go first? And it goes to B.
Oh yeah,
And then I hit it and
I
nothing
is way
happens. And I'm
far
like,
away than
damn.
B
Yeah,
comparatively.
he's a little too far. Or I's a little too far. Um, okay, so that's the example, right? Now, obviously, we're not going to be voting on everything.
No,
Of course not, right?
most of it will
But
be feedback oriented. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of these things will be like, that was a great example, the B or the I. Excuse me. That was a great example of B or the I because that's something that is easy to collect feedback. It's a default thing, and people can change it if they want to, right?
Yeah.
And we're all about options and changing things as well. But more of those types of interactions, which I think the community enjoys anyways, right? And it's something that's not, necessarily infringing on the concept of the game, the core loops of the game, right? That is not what we want to put up to vote. We don't want to put up to vote the identity. We want to put up to vote a lot of the subjective player kind of facing decision stuff that we feel confident in. The other thing is feedback, and we talked a little bit earlier about that, having the devs interact and being more vocal and talking. All right, we want to move to. Oh, I'm sorry. There's more to this section.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling down.
We talked a bit about this already about the persistence, so I don't think we need to go in more detail about it. But
Yeah.
because we do expect database, that's what the DB stands for, database schema, to change for performance and balance issues and fixes, that does mean that we may have to do persistent wipes for those if
Yeah,
necessary. So
this
it's kind
is
of giving
this
you a
is
reason and an understanding of what to
this
expect.
is why so the database schema and how the gameplay systems are interacting with the database, right? That is essentially the types of things that we're going to be observing, the data we're going to be collecting that can influence how or why we may need to do persistence wipes. And of course, that's going to come much more into focus during phase 1 and 2 in the hopes that phase 3 will not have to see any persistence wipes. That is the goal, right? And that's also partly the reason for the phase testing as well, right? That is a very foundational and fundamental interaction, what persistence entails from a database perspective and these gameplay systems interacting with that. So keeping that in mind, that can be crucial for us collecting data because you could be 5 days into a test or a week into a test And we're collecting the data on how nodes are progressing, the movement of those locations and areas are progressing. And now we need to wipe the database because of some issue that we've encountered, and we have lost progression beyond that 5th day or 6th day. So it's important that we nail those down during phase 1 and 2. We talked about testing core gameplay loops. Obviously, this is why we're doing Alpha 2, right? In addition to all the technical components, the gameplay loops are really where your feedback is most important. This is where the conversation with the developers is most important. How did it feel to play through these types of systems? Where were the problems with these systems? How did it not interact well on a large multiplayer functionality? What are the blind spots in our design that we haven't seen because we're very much in the box perspective, and you're outside of that now coming in to get a fresh look and play through? That's something that's very important to
And
us.
the big piece of this, and the reason why it's there for you to understand what to expect, is that you can expect that we will be reacting to those feedback loops, and we will be fixing and updating things on those 3 to 6 week cadences, depending on where the thing lies, right? If it's a critical issue, if it's something that can just be a bug fix, or if it's something that's much bigger and a bigger feature change that we have to make, right? Those will be on the 6 week, and those will be happening for every phase, not just phase 3. I think people were thinking that those cadences would only be phase 3. Like Steven said, those are part of our development process. We work on a 2 week
Absolutely.
sprints, so you will see those cadences for
Yeah.
every phase.
I mean, this is a big transition for the studio and for the project, right? Because right now, those cadences are what we currently do internally when it's not outwardly facing. And now what's going to happen is we have this, just to talk a little bit about that. We have this release train of development where our source control system is a program that's called Perforce. It's shared obviously by a lot of different development teams, and what that means is live development occurs in these lower streams that's we call our development branch, or our ICS or engine, branches. And then that's where the most problematic bugs are found. That's where the highest instability can occur. That's where we can see errors and warnings in the builds, and we have problems. And our QA team, which is a phenomenal QA team that's led up by Hector, who has been around the block multiple times within this industry, and they're responsible for trying to catch the biggest offending bugs that are really problematic before we take what's on that development stream, that code, that content, everything that lives there, and take a promotion up from development into the next stream, which is QA. And then from QA, we go into staging, and then, or LKG, which is last known good, and then to staging. And then eventually it makes its way into our stream that's called production. And that's where players sync to with their launcher in order to receive the client, right? So at each of those checkpoints, we are trying to identify major bugs, critical issues. We are trying to resolve them. We're trying to patch into that stream if necessary. We merge back down those, changes that occur. But just to give you a concept like that is what it takes to release a code. That is what it takes to release a software, a product.
And I want to be conscious of time. So obviously, this next
Oh
part,
yeah, this is gonna be a
we don't
long
have
one.
to, yeah, we don't have to go into too much detail on, but what we need from you guys is testing, right? We need you to test across all the archetypes, especially as we increase and add more archetypes. We need you to test our node progression and our systems, all our crafting systems. We need you to test against implemented content, whether that's PvP or PvE content. So just in general, we just need you to test as much as possible, giving us that data. The more content you do, the more systems you interact with, the more data that we get. And of course, that kind of loops into what those things that we listed earlier of what you can expect from us moving from there.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to
And
what
real
you.
quick,
Oh,
I just want to talk about the 3 realms to start.
oh
So
yeah, yeah.
a lot of people are talking about, wait a minute, there's only going to be 3 realms to start. As I
Three
said,
realms per region to
it's
start.
it's per region, and we're going to be supporting Western Europe and North America, right? So
For alpha,
those are
just for alpha 2. As we expand to the other testing phases, we will expand to more regions, just to be clear.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. So betas, obviously, we will be far more extensive with regards to the realms that we're supporting and the regions that we're in. But for Alpha 2, Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3, Ashes of Creation will be published by Intrepid Studios in those regions of Western Europe and North America. Right now, what we say 3 realms each to start. 6 total realms. That is entirely dependent, the number of those realms, on the number of users that we see will be joining the testing sessions. So we talked about releasing obviously new A2 sales. We're going to get to that here at the end of the deck. I know for many of you that have been posting on social media, they're posting on Reddit, they're posting on forums about a way to access Alpha 2. We are going to be providing that. And depending on the scaling of how many of those additional A2 sales we do, we will be spinning up new realms to support that. It's not going to be bogging down the queues on those, 6 realms, and we're going to stick with those 6 realms. We're going to scale the realm count. So just keep that in mind.
And
Okay,
of course, as we
sorry.
get more users, we'll need to anyway scale.
Absolutely.
But we want to also keep them healthy, so we want to make sure that we're putting enough, like making enough space for.
I see people saying US West or US East. The goal is to be US Central. So for the North American servers. And obviously we have the ability to deploy in any region across North America and Western Europe. So depending on how we heat map the number of players and where they're located on, that may encourage us to spin up clusters within the cloud for those regions that might be US East or US West.
All right, moving on to kind of the comparison of what you saw in Alpha 1 versus what you'll be seeing in Alpha 2 with a little map there for you, different
Where are we?
regions.
Are we deck page 7?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, those of you who participated in Alpha 1, the project has come a long way since Alpha 1. We've literally had an engine version change
Yeah.
between
The
between UE4 and
UE4 to
UE5,
UE5.
right?
5.3.
Yeah, but we are on 5.3, and we will continue to upgrade the project to later iterations of Unreal Engine 5 during testing of Alpha 2. So keeping that in mind, we will likely be moving to 5.4 at some point between phase 1 and 2. We had a lot of different systems in Alpha 1, and Alpha 1 was not under NDA. So for those of you who weren't around during Alpha 1, don't remember Alpha 1, feel free to go back and take a look at the game then, right? Feel free to take a look at some of the systems. There were a lot of people that covered it. There was a lot of content creators that were a part of Alpha 1. And you can take a look at where the game was then. The game has come a very long way. And primarily when I speak about what it has come a long way in, I'm talking about systems and content, right? We changed a lot of, almost all of the networking stack between Alpha 1 and Alpha 2. We changed all of the ability system. We have created new ways for NPCs to interact with our behavior state trees. We have changed the player economy and interactions and a component-driven gameplay engineering focus, right? Like there's a lot that goes into where we've come from the learnings of Alpha 1 to what Alpha 2 is. So yeah.
All right. Let's
Oh,
move
I didn't even
on.
see there's a whole different section here too. I have my the size of this is so large that it moved that around a little bit. Node features, sorry, world bosses, story quests, a lot of that stuff obviously has changed in Alpha 2. So yeah, go ahead. You're good, Margaret.
All right. Let's move on to phase 1. I think this is what people really want to know is what's going to be in each of the phases that are coming up. And as we've always said in the it's a work in progress. We're going to be continuing to move things along. So some things may move to different phases, but this is kind of where we project where these things will land, especially for phase 1. Some of these features you will see at the start of phase 1, and some of them you will see as we expand Alpha 1 or phase 1 with the cadence updates every 6 weeks.
There is a lot on this page. And we're not going to go through, I think, every single one of these things. There's a lot here to fit on one particular slide, and I'm going to leave it to content creators to talk a little bit about, what is expected in phase 1. And as Margaret said, we're going to go through phase 1, we're going to go through phase 2 and phase 3. But keep in mind, again, I'm going to iterate this again because, there needs to be a rapport and expectation between us as the developers, you guys as the community, that as we get through testing, these things can absolutely change 100%, because it's all about prioritization. As we experience stuff, we may move things around in the deliverable structure, and that's okay to do. So let's talk about the world. We have the western and eastern Aelan Riverlands, right? And we have obviously our desert and tropic biomes, which are going to be included during phase 1 to have parts of Sandsquall Desert and the Vandegar Tropics that are available. We saw a little bit of the tropics in Alpha 1. We saw some of the, I think in Alpha 1 we had like that turquoise sea area that we expanded to a little bit as well. But this is going to be the desert in which players for the first time will be playing through.
And don't
As
worry, we'll
part of
have these
phase
in an
1.
article that you can click on and you can see in 4K imagery. So that will be coming out, because I know that a lot of people are like, I can't read because it's, on a little screen. But we'll definitely make sure that you guys can get access to these.
Yes, absolutely. Is it super small?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Oh, so maybe I should go through them then.
no, I don't think you need to go through them all. We'll be here all
Margaret's
day.
like,
So
no, don't do
we
it.
still have a bunch of questions we need to answer,
Okay,
and we
okay,
have
okay, okay.
15 minutes left in our
It's,
allotted time.
oh my God, you're kidding.
No, because we
We're
have
def
a external
Oh
playtest.
no.
I
Oh
think we're
no.
gonna go
Okay.
over.
All right. So we have. Let me just try to go through a little bit real quick on the world. So we have a bunch of points of interest, right? These range from very large points of interest to medium and small points of interest. Obviously, we have our day and night cycle. We have our 4 seasons. We have the dynamic world populations and dynamic reward tables. Those are super important when it comes to world, right? Because obviously, one of the main focuses of Ashes of Creation is how the world changes according to the actions of the player or according to the actions of the system. And dynamic world populations and reward tables is those monster settings within the playable space changing based off of those world state predicates. So keeping in mind that that system being up and running is a very important part to feeling like the world is different. In addition, we also have a grand dungeon. That is the Tower of Carfin. This is a very large structure. We had some players within the playtest recently running through there talking about, I can't believe how big this place is, because it is a large location. We have pocket dungeons as well. Talking a little bit about nodes. At the phase 1 level, we're going to have 5 node locations that will be primarily level 3. However, there will be some systems that we will be turning on that are level 4 systems in order to test during phase 1. Dynamic road leveling. Obviously, this is we talked a little bit about during the caravan stream. This is providing buffs for mounts and for caravans, changing the advance of visual quality. I'm going to go through this stuff real quick. Just I'm going to be fast. You may hear me talking, and if I'm sorry if English is not your native language, this might be a little bit quick. 4 service building plots, 5 default buildings, 8 active constructed buildings. Each of those are providing different types of services. We will be probably listing as part of the article some of the names of those specific buildings, so a little bit more expanded information around that. The node currency system is up and running. Citizenship is up and running. We have 56 separate tax categories that mayors have the ability to manipulate and customize. We have buy orders. We have 25 plus player commodities and 24 plus mayoral commission types, as well as 36 node resources that all are accompanied with tier 1 through 3 recipes, and have service building expansion voting, which is essentially where citizens help to vote on the expansion for those service buildings. And I believe there's 22 different expansions that are possible within the node proper for those buildings. Now, races. Very important thing about races. We have Vec, Kalar, and Empyrean to start. You might be asking yourself, but we've seen almost all the other races in.
But I think it'd be Vec and Kalar to start, and then Empyrean will be added in phase 1.
Yeah, that might be true. That might be true. So you might be asking yourself, well, we've seen the races played in the game. There's a lot that goes into making a race fully playable, and that includes making sure that we have all of the 470 plus unique pieces of armor deformed to each one of the races, so that when you equip a Pauldron or a Curus and it is on a unique race, that it's not interpenetrating the race, that it doesn't have some weird, skin weight issues. There's a lot that goes into making sure all of the pieces of armor are applicable to a particular race. So keeping that in mind, those races are available, but we need to continue the deformation work on that. We have 6 different archetypes, which you guys have seen through the course of our development live update streams. Each of, excuse me, not each, those archetypes have a combined 130 plus unique abilities, 60 plus unique passives, 22 different status conditions that live across all of those different archetypes. We have 8 unique weapons that each have 30 plus nodes per weapon skill tree. And by the way, this is a lot of detailed information on like what we're going to have in phase 1, 2, and 3. And normally we probably would not take this approach in outlining kind of each of these things. But what we have heard from the community is that you guys want to know this. And so because of that, you might be getting information overload, some of you. But we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community that they want to get this level of detail. So because of
Keeping in
that,
mind that phase 1, a lot of these features will start at the beginning and some of them will come throughout. Whereas some of the other phases, you'll see less content because it'll be just the additional stuff that's coming along. So that's why this phase 1 is very big, is because it's not only the updates that you're seeing in Alpha 1 or in phase 1, but it's also what we start with. So it's like a
correct.
combination. Yeah.
That's right. So talking a little bit about PvP, there will be flagging, there will be corruption system, there will be guild wars, node wars, and caravan PvP events. You might see a term here you don't understand, and that is lawless zones. We have talked a little bit in the past about a change that we made to the open seas being open areas of player combat. I want to talk a little bit about this before we move forward, of what a lawless zone entails. You have the eastern and western Riverlands locations, which is where the 5 node propers will be at the start of phase 1. Flanking on each side of the western and eastern Riverlands will be playable space in the Vandagar Tropics and the Sandsquall Desert that have a lawless zone applied to it, which means that if you move into those areas, you will automatically be flagged for PvP. And these areas will have the highest level NPCs to start. And again, the concept behind this testing also is that like you're the first wave of players, you're the first wave of settlers coming through the gates, right? And you're expanding outwardly from the ancient Aelan ruins of the Riverlands location. And the extension of your governments doesn't reach as far into the unknown of this world that is accessible to you and your travels. So as you move out into these outer regions that are the tropics and the desert, POIs are still being developed in those locations from a development perspective. So they're just going to contain overland populations and likely a turn-in location for caravans to move to that will reward the highest return for those outward caravan turn-in locations. As players move into those locations, they're going to experience the lawless zone. That means they're going to be flagged for PvP, and they're going to be hunting the highest level monsters in the alpha phases in these outward lawless zones that will drop unique materials that are related to enchantment for weapons. All of the end game kind of loops that will be present during the different alpha phases will exist within these lawless territories. Not all of them. I mean, obviously we'll have stuff that's not in the lawless territories, but a lot of them will exist within the lawless territories, and you can drop those on player death. So that's going to be kind of the loop of PvP within those locations as well. Okay, talking about systems and economy, we're going to have obviously flying ground, water mounts. We're going to have caravans with management for those caravans in the stalls, the cargo for those caravans and caravan events that we talked about. They can transition into rafts. That's going to be important, especially for the Riverlands, because the Riverlands is consisting of a lot of different rivers per its namesake. We have a mail system that's going to be active. We have player trading that's active. We have level 25 for artisanship professions. That's novice, apprentice, and journeyman certification systems. They will not be accompanied by the skill trees yet for all of the professions, but the professions will be available for level acquisition and the novice, apprentice, and journeyman qualifications. We will have 15 unique gathering tools, 33 unique gatherables, surveying, fishing, hunting with 38 unique animals that will be populated at the start of phase 1, along with over 400 processing recipes, 600 crafting recipes. We will have the gear enchantment system online, or is currently online. We
I
have the
think
party and
hunting
raid
comes
markers.
online in phase 1. I don't think it comes at the start.
I think it's at the
Is
start,
it
but
at the
I
start?
will double check
Yeah.
that. I will double check that. I'm pretty sure it's at the start of phase 1. Party and raid markers. We will have chat systems for obviously guild, party, citizenship, global. Item deconstruction and repair. This is obviously the primary sink for an open economy like ours. Those deconstructions are going to provide unique materials that are necessary in order to craft higher level gear. So that's something important to keep in mind. And then we'll have 45 unique caravan components that help to kind of create a compelling caravan system. Somebody in chat is asking what is max level. At the start of Alpha 1 Phase 1, or excuse me, Alpha 2 Phase 1, the starting level will be level 25 for adventuring and level 25 for artisanship professions. On the content side, now this is something to keep in mind. There's a lot of content here, but again, this is from an alpha perspective. So there will be bugs, there will be issues, there will be things that we need to fix and flesh out further. But
And some
at
of
the
these things
start of
will be
Alpha,
in their basic stage. They won't be in their like final, stage with all of the
absolutely.
bells and whistles.
Yep, we will have 460 plus unique pieces of gear with the Node War Godspike event, 16 unique public events, 149 story-driven quests and commissions with 111 treasure maps. The treasure maps are fun. 3 world bosses with over 44 abilities and behaviors, with 75 unique enemy creatures, with 280 plus unique NPC abilities and behaviors. Keeping in mind, of course, at the start of Alpha 2, combat is a very important thing that we want to collect feedback on. And it's not just combat with regards to the way that the archetypes have been authored, but also the encounter design that players are interacting with these enemy NPCs and their unique behaviors that we have, so that you guys can give us feedback, because archetype design is half of that battle. The other half of that battle is the enemy you're facing. That is something that players need to give us feedback on. Okay. As always, development is a moving train and subject to change.
Just like the
Yeah, I know, just like
caveat.
so keeping in mind, when you think about the Dodge AMA. No, not Dodge AMA. We're
We're
gonna have an AMA.
I
This is
think
just
we're
gonna
gonna
be a
be
long
long.
one.
Yeah,
This is gonna be a long
Steven and
one.
I will stick with you guys. We just won't be able to partake in our spot test that we have going on today, but
Oh
it
no.
does mean
We're good.
our
We can go
volunteer
exactly.
mods, we love you so much because our community managers are gonna have to go assist with that.
We can go to we can. It starts at 2 o'clock. We can go for another hour and a half. We'll parachute in.
All right, we
All
ready to
right.
move to phase 2? Because I see a lot of people posting like other features and stuff. We're gonna get to them. Calm down, homies. We're
Yes.
getting
All
there.
right. Let's talk about phase 2.
All right, phase 2.
So this is something that's very important. Again, I'm gonna hit this as we get into phase 2 and phase 3. I said 30 minutes ago that the further you look out, the higher the chance for chains. Right? Okay. So phase 1, we have those things that are testing right now. They are in QA.
And then some of
Phase
those are coming
2,
online in the phase 1. Yeah.
right. Phase 2, some of this stuff is still in development. Has not gone through QA. Some of this stuff has not begun development yet on some of these things. So as we talk about what's going to be introduced for phase 2, hear me when I say this. Content creators, help me hammer this home. Things can absolutely change. Okay? That means that you're going to see features and content here, and it is possible that it gets bumped to phase 3. So remember that. Okay, let's talk about zone expansion. We are going to expand into the Sandsquall Desert. We're going to expand into the Vandegar Tropics. And what this means is POI development is going to land during phase 2 for those spaces. We are going to have dungeons come online in those spaces for the phase 2. We're going to have nodes come online potentially for those spaces in phase 2. 2 unique node layouts with 4 levels, node sieging potentially with vassalship and node death. The additional mayoral commissions, relics. Relics are important. We haven't talked about in a long time, but these are node objectives essentially, right? That the citizens communally are responsible to achieve and bring back to the node, and they grant benefits. Freeholds will be coming online. Additional service buildings and economic election type. We're going to be adding the Veilun and the Dunir races. We'll be getting the Rogue with 20 abilities, 10 passive, 30 skill nodes total between them. And additionally, we'll be getting four weapons, the dual wield daggers, the scepters, two-handed maces, and two-handed axe. Those weapons obviously come with skills as well, on average around 30 skills per weapon progression. Siege vehicles, tempering, right? Tempering, this is how you improve the item stats. Gems and sockets by adding additional waterfall type behaviors to those items. Gear ascension, repair kits, artisanship skill trees. We talked about the artisanship level being up to level 25 for phase 1. In phase 2, they're going to have some level of accompanying skill trees in order for players to test. We saw a little bit about that in the artisanship preview stream a while ago. Animal husbandry, breeding, party gathering, and player shops, leaderboards. These are some of the additional systems that phase 2 will contain. On the content side, we're going to start seeing the story arcs come alive. Now, we've seen story arcs in the past as part of our development updates. That was standing up the functional system. Right now, some of the story arcs are in a testable state, but we do not believe that they will be prioritized to a playable state until phase 2. So keeping that in mind, story arcs are obviously multi-day long kind of public campaigns that exist within certain spaces of the world and have certain player agency over those as well. Dynamic world dungeons. We talked a little bit about dynamic population spawners. We talked about dynamic reward tables. The dynamic world dungeons are going to be kind of the spaces that become available within those dungeons based off of certain world state predicates, right? That's another important thing to keep in mind. And NPC ambient behaviors, right? If I'm spawning a bunch of undead creatures like we saw on the Bard live stream within a farm, we want those undead creatures to do farming things, to rake leaves and dig ditches and do whatever farmers do. I don't know what farmers do. I'm not a farmer, but we need to have those ambient behaviors available for NPCs, and that's going to be landing sometime in phase 2. As always, development is a moving train and subject to change.
I'm going to reiterate this also because it seems like there is a little bit of confusion. I'm watching all the channels. Is again that what we're showing in phase 1, what we're showing in phase 2, these are not things that will necessarily be at the start of each of these phases. There will be some of them that will be coming online at the start of them, but these are things that you can expect within those phases. During. So like we said, we have those 3-week cadences, we have those 6-week cadences. That's when the 6-week cadence is when you're going to see those big updates, and the 3 weeks is when you're going to see those bug fixes and things of that sort. And you may see little updates here and there with some of the smaller features. But just keeping that in mind. Phase 1 stuff, that's what you can see, you can expect as we go through phase 1. All the stuff on phase 2 is what you can expect as we go into phase 2. It doesn't mean that it's going to be at the start of each of these phases.
Think about it like this. Before we leave that phase, our goal, and by goal I mean it might change, is to have these things in that phase. So before the end of the phase, our goal, and by goal we mean they might change, is to have these things in the phase. Let's say it together. Okay, so that's important to keep in mind. Very good point. Thank you, Margaret. That was great.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate because I think there's a little bit of confusion on that internally, externally.
Yes, absolutely.
Ready to move on to the final phase?
I am ready. It's the final count. Yes, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Phase 3.
So Alpha 2, Phase 3, features and content. We're going to be adding 2 additional zones, the Turquoise Sea and the Anvils. Now, again, keep in mind, Phase 3 runs a while. So what we're talking about here with regards to these additional features and content is what you can expect within the first few months of Phase 3, right? So there's going to be a lot that's going to be in technically Phase 3 before it ends. These are some of the things that are going to be within the first few months of phase 3 beginning. So a little bit of a different one for phase 3. The Turquoise Sea, the Anvils. I don't think we've talked about those locations in the past. Actually, I know some of the Turquoise Sea was a part of the design
Yeah, but
for Alpha
Anvil we
1.
have not, which is more of a mountain
Yes, that's
area. Yeah.
right. As you can expect.
Yeah.
Um,
The dwarves, you know.
That's right. We're going to have four new unique load layouts, 5 levels of military and divine election types, atrophy events, policies, node happiness, additional mayor commissions, and additional service buildings. We will be adding in 4 additional races: the Pyre, the Renkai, the Nakua, the Talnar, and then finally the Summoner archetype will be introduced, and we will have some elements of the secondary archetype specialization within the cleric and tank. These are going to be examples of how augments work. It is not going to be fully fleshed out, but it is going to be some examples as we begin to move forward there. Additional weapons: the orb, one-handed axe, one-handed sword. And obviously, from a systems perspective, we will have fully functional guilds. Now, when you think about what's going to be guild available for phase 1, these are going to be the abilities to stand up guilds, going to be the ability to invite players to the guilds, to kick players from the guild, to participate in certain guild content and quests. But when we talk about gaining guild skill points and investing those into certain passives abilities and having guild levels, that's not going to be available until phase 3. In addition, we may be expanding the freehold system now for guild freeholds, and castle sieges will be coming online. We will have some elements of the naval systems available beyond what's available with rafts. And we will have aquatic mounts. I think aquatic mounts are in phase 1, but we'll clarify that. Underwater combat, instanced content, the dying gear
Apologies for the
system.
typos. I see typos in there.
There's some typos. There's
Yeah.
a little bit of typos. Transmog, dying gear system, pets, and then certain aerial combat abilities for some of the flying or gliding mounts. Religions and auction house, right? Auction house is obviously a big one from an economy perspective. That's going to come online during that time frame. Treasure maps for the Turquoise Sea and for the Anvils are going to be online as well from a content perspective. We're going to have dynamic world dungeons again. That will be introduced, and unique story arcs added. As always, development is moving and subject to change. So these are our goals for phases 1, 2, and 3. And again, these goals can change. We will be talking with you as we go through playing these periods, these phases. Our development updates will start to change their focus and will be about playing the game with the players, going through that experience, talking about the feedback we're getting, talking about the testing, talking about what's in active development, and showing some of that 6-week cadence content delivery as part of those live streams as well. So this is going to be a little bit of a shift from what historically has been the purview of our company's public face to the community, and now is going to look like us playing the game with the players and talking about the things that we're doing with the game in a live fashion setting.
And as we go into each of these phases, we will, like, October 25th, we're going to have information prior to that that will give you kind of an understanding of what we're coming into that phase with. And then as we have updates, we'll have patch notes, we'll have information in regards to the bigger updates. You'll probably see those in a little bit more of a different fashion, maybe some video formats, maybe some live streams. So you'll be seeing a lot of this stuff in more detail as we move forward in each of the phases.
Yes. And I do see some comments about character creator. When is character creator? Those of you who have access to Alpha 2 will have access to the character creator starting in phase 1. So the character creator is available with the game client in phase 1. What we have changed with regards to the character creator is that we will not have a standalone character creator client, probably until phase 3. At some point in phase 3, we will release that standalone character creator client. But right now, the character creator is part of phase 1. And those of you who have access to phase 1 will go through the character creation process as normal as you enter into the game and play the game.
And those who have already been starting to test with us for pre-Alpha 2, have already been kind of messing with it. It's still we're still adding features and adjustments, but once we hit phase one of Alpha 2, you'll be seeing a lot more of those come online, especially for the two races that we'll be launching, which is the VEC and the KLAR. All
Yes.
right.
So what do we got next?
The next thing is Alpha 2 access. For those of you who didn't purchase Alpha 2 access before, this has been a thing that you guys keep asking us for. It's been something that we've been
Oh my God,
discussing
we have got
internally.
ticket after ticket after
Yeah.
ticket. We have gotten a lot of commentary about this. I know that we have made statements in the past about how we're going to approach releasing that new keys. To be clear, these Alpha 2 access keys are just the keys. This is a significant departure from what historically we have done with regards to pre-order packages, having virtual currency, having playtime when the game launches, having multiple access and access to beta 1 and 2. These keys will just have access to Alpha 2, and they will have access to different phases of Alpha 2. It is extremely important. It is extremely important to remember. You are not purchasing access to a game. You are not purchasing access to an early access. You are purchasing access to testing Alpha 2. So that is a very important aspect of these different items. Margaret,
And
do
we're
you want to talk a little bit about how? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and we're keeping in mind the people who have purchased before as well. We know that our community has definitely expressed concern in regards to that. So hopefully, I know we're not going to please everybody. Steven and I have said that many times to ourselves. We're like, we're trying to be as fair as possible as we can be. But how this is going to work is all three of these keys will be available to you on Wednesday, August 21st, 2024 at 11 a.m. Pacific. That is going to be next Wednesday. So for those of you who are with us watching this live on Friday, that is when that is going to take place. Each
It's
of these
actually
each of these will end at a certain date or until supplies last. So we will have a number that we are looking at internally in order to make sure that we can service those users. Have the capacity in order to make sure you have a good experience in Alpha 2. But
yep.
if we hit those supplies, then we will let you know in advance, like, hey, we're going to start taking this down at this date. If it is before that date, but we're hoping that we won't have to do that, and it should end around the time lots that are there that you can see
Yeah.
on the screen here. And then so
And just real quick, it's important to note. I just want to hammer this home again. And
yeah,
content creators, please help me with this as well. You should not be buying a key to Alpha 2 if you're expecting to play a game.
yeah.
You should
Don't
not
get first wave,
you
especially.
you especially first wave. The great thing about us not having an NDA is that if you want to see the game's progress and not from a developer's perspective, you can see other people playing this game and you can see the progress of the game. You are not going to miss out on anything if you do not participate in Alpha 2. You're going to be able to see other people playing the game. Persistence doesn't carry over into the live launch of the game. It's going to be a brand new, fresh start when it comes to the launch of Ashes of Creation. So there's nothing that you're missing out on if you do not participate in Alpha 2. We are releasing these A2 keys because two reasons. One, we need additional testers as we move forward in these phases. And why do we need that? Because ultimately what happens in every MMORPG is you have some sect of retention within cohorts. And that retention is always going to be at a downward angle from your starting user cohort. So it's important to keep in mind that as phase 1 goes through and as phase 2 goes through and as phase 3 goes through, we will be introducing new users and new testers who do want to participate in testing an alpha, not looking at it from a gameplay from a being a fun and completed game perspective, but who want to help shape the form of what Ashes of Creation intends to be by offering good and actionable feedback, by creating bug reports for us, by crashing and being a test dummy for us, right? Those are elements of why a person who wants to participate might be encouraged to then purchase a key, not because they're purchasing access to early
I
access.
also want to make a clarification. If you purchase first wave, you get access to Alpha 2 starting on that date, and you get second. You're gonna play Alpha 2 for the rest of Alpha 2. If you
Yes.
get second wave, you're gonna have that date you start, and you get to play all the way to. You don't have to buy all 3 keys. That is not how it works. Just buy
That's
1
correct.
key, and you get access to Alpha 2.
That's
So that is
correct.
how it works. I just want to make that
And,
very clear. You don't buy all 3. You just buy 1, and then you get access from that date to the end of Alpha 2.
that's correct. Yep.
You do not get access to beta. This is only Alpha 2 access. If you want beta, we will maybe be offering another option for a beta in the future. But right now, we're focused on Alpha 2 at the moment. We won't be bringing back pre-order packs. We've already said that before. So it will just be in the future. If we do decide to increase the amount of people in beta 1 or beta 2, it would be similar to this in the sense that it will be a key that you purchase for just that access. And it's
That's
not
right.
a code key. It's just access. You're gaining access to the game. You're not getting a code or a key that you're giving out to anybody.
And as Margaret said at the beginning, like, we fully understood and expected that this is going to be the spiciest of topics when it comes to access to the game, right? And there's not going to be a price that's going to please everybody. I mean,
No.
that's just the bottom line. And with regards to the 2 objectives that releasing the additional keys provides, the first one again was providing the testers that we need in order to shape the game the right way. The second is there are a lot of people who want to participate that didn't know about Ashes of Creation 6 months ago, that didn't know about Ashes of Creation 4 months ago, that are learning about Ashes of Creation today,
That may
right?
learn about Ashes of Creation in May of next
And
year.
tomorrow, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to have avenues for those audiences to access the game. And what we've done here is we've approached it taking a look at the value of alpha access within the previous packages that we've offered as it relates to the other components of those packages, the game time, the virtual currency for the cosmetics
Those
themselves and
packages were
their
a deal.
value. Right. So
Yeah.
comparatively, like, I would ask that some of the content creators also help to articulate and enumerate what the value proposition is between those two when we think about that from a comparative standpoint.
The other thing to note here is that we haven't provided an end date for Alpha 2. I think people are asking about that and want iteration on it, but we'll end Alpha 2 when we feel it's ready. So we want to make sure,
Absolutely.
as you saw in that phase 3 slide, there are some things that we want to ensure that we make sure that we get. And there's some additional features and systems that we'd also like to get in there for Alpha 2 that are not listed on that page. So we will kind of extend that Alpha 2 for as long as we feel it's necessary. So you will get a good chunk of time to play the game and test it. Obviously, towards the end there, you'll be playing more of a game. For the beginning, it's going to be very much like Steven said. You're not really playing a game, you're testing it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, a lot more basic systems versus as we get later in the phases, you'll see more of
Absolutely.
those intricacies come online.
And so I know the next section that we have is the AMA. And
Yes.
before we get into the AMA, I want to close by saying this for the deck. 2 important points. First, with regards to what we're doing with Alpha 2, the testing that it entails, the incomplete status of the game, right? What we've talked about, this is not a completed game. One thing I love about our community, and that me having played many different MMOs, as many of you have, it can be difficult to find a community, in my opinion, as genuine as ours, and as welcoming and inviting and polite as ours. Not everybody is going to like what we're doing from a gameplay perspective. Not everybody is going to like the visuals of the game. Not everybody is going to like the monetization strategy of selling the keys. Not everybody is going to like cosmetics. Not everybody is going to like PvP. There is a very eclectic crowd of MMORPG players, and we are not building an MMO for everyone. And we know that, and we accept that, and that's a truth. There is a specific section of the market share that is going to be interested in Ashes of Creation. When those people who are not interested in one of those things comes into our community and says things that may ruffle your feathers, I would implore you to continue the upstanding tradition that our community has had over the course of these last several years and be polite. give them the proper advice and direction when it comes to how we as other human beings who live behind a screen should interact with each other, right? We are one community. We're a gaming community.
And you could
We
get
are
them to change their
gamers.
mind too,
No,
right?
yeah, I
That
mean,
is the biggest thing.
yeah,
Like
I
they could
mean, I
become part of our community if they just understood like
for
where we're
sure.
coming from too.
Well, that speaks to being a good representative. And again, what I would say is we are one gaming community. We are all gamers together. We have different interests, and that's okay. And we have different thoughts, and some of us can be more abrasive than others, and that's okay too. But what I would ask of our community and content creators, help me hit this home too, is that we are inviting of other opinions, we are inviting of other thoughts, and that we don't pounce, we don't attack, and we don't mistreat. We follow that golden rule, and we can be good stewards of this community and good representatives, like Margaret said. And by doing so, we will attract more users to this game. So please, I would tell you, as my fellow gamers, let us represent the best of us. Um, Things are likely going to change, and people are not going to like that. And it is important for us not to be white knights, hold us accountable where we need to be held accountable. That's part of the symbiotic relationship between a developer and a community, right? That's an important aspect of that. I don't watch criticisms or videos that talk about, losing trust in Intrepid or delays or problems. This is a marathon, not a race. Is that the right phrasing?
Yeah, I think uh
I think I always get that mixed up. It's like this is a marathon, not a sprint, or this is a marathon race. This
yeah.
is a long haul journey. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Thank you. The chat is saying it's a marathon, not a sprint. This is a marathon, not a sprint. What does that mean? That means that we still have a road ahead of us. We still have a lot of things that we need to do. And as a result of that road still being significant, there are going to be changes to what we have talked about here today. And so trust, that relationship of trust, is hearing those words as well and having an understanding when those words are spoken, that that could be the reality, and let us help set expectations with the broader community about that truth. That is what helps.
And I think on the front of, when you talked about we take criticism. Criticism, we understand that criticism is an important part of the process. I mean, that's the whole point of feedback loops and suggestions and understanding what you guys want and making sure we're all on the same page. I think that it's how you communicate your criticisms, which is the big thing. There are constructive ways to do that versus ways that are kind of vulgar, like Stephen said. And I think like finding the balance there is going to be very important because we're all people. We're doing our best on our front to like create a great game, right?
I
And
thought that
we
we
come
were
from
pod
good.
people.
We come with good intentions, right? And the worst thing that I always see is like when people say, "Oh, the developers don't care." I will let you know, everyone here at Intrepid cares, like so
Cares
deeply.
beyond more, yeah, than you could
And it is
imagine.
hard when we read stuff and it's like, oh man, we totally get where that person's coming from. But at the same
I-
time, we have to adhere to what we can do on our end at the same time. So we try to be as open and communicative with you guys about how we're doing things, what we're doing, and ensuring that you have an understanding of those things. They may not always be the thing you want, but it's kind of making sure that you
I'm gonna,
understand why and how we're doing it.
I'm gonna tell you one thing about recruitment at this studio. There is a question that every single person who works here has answered when it comes to an interview that I have with them. What are your favorite MMOs that you've played? Every single person here is an MMO gamer. And that is why it is so important to us, as Margaret is saying, to deliver on something that we ourselves would be proud of.
We
And
want to play.
if that takes time, if that takes us doing iterations that we didn't plan for, making changes that we didn't plan for, that is something that we have the luxury of doing because of the unique circumstances of how this studio was founded, right? That is not typical within the industry. I cannot express enough. If you know anyone in this industry and you talk to them about the story of Intrepid and what we're building, it is very unique. When I go on LinkedIn and I see the commentary from people about Intrepid and about Ashes, is it taking a long time to develop this game? What we're doing is special, and it should take a long time to do something special,
I mean, you
right?
think about most of the MMOs that have been created, like the legacy of MMOs that have been created. Most of them did take 10 to 15 years to create. So keeping that in mind, hopefully we don't have to take that long, but you never
Yes.
know. So I think like, and that was, a different age when like things were a little bit more simpler in the way that content was created. And now it's like people want and expect very intricate systems with great UI, with great user input, right? Like it's just a totally different time. As well as even some of the accessibility features that you need to have these days. It's just a very different development world that we live in. And of course, we are sharing the journey. Most developers don't do that. They create the game and then they share it with you as it's already created.
Yep.
So they don't, and their alphas and betas are more like testing phases that are like, hey, we have a full product. Now we're just showing it to you guys to ensure that we're hitting the line and we're just bug fixing, right? Whereas we're like,
Absolutely.
this is a true, prototype alpha phase that you would
It's hot
expect,
off the rack.
you know.
Destroy it. No,
We're past that now because we're in alpha 2, but
I know.
yeah, it's kind of that type of system where like we're actually showing you what true development looks like versus which is behind closed doors normally.
By the way, the most important thing I want to talk about real quick, last point
Before
that
we
I
get into
saw
the questions.
somebody before we go into the AMA. I saw Sinzoa in chat say pay to win garbage is what keeps coming out. Um, we don't even talk about that anymore because it's just an understood thing.
Yeah, we are not
But
doing pay to
the
win.
most important thing is that we don't do any pay to win and we never will. So that is a very important thing to keep in mind. I know that there are new MMOs today. I think about what MMOs are playable, what MMOs can we play, and how is monetization screwing the design.
Yeah, our goal is only
And pay to
cosmetic
win is
stuff.
always that.
If you see stuff that are on our purchases, it's mostly cosmetic things. We try our best to keep it that way.
Absolutely.
Well,
Let's do
and
this
keep.
AMA.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, our first question here is from Araga, and they want to know about debug tools. Is the team planning to make a debug tool so Alpha 2 testers can identify and share critical information regarding bugs like XYZ coordinates, nodes, server
Yes.
boundaries, etc.?
Absolutely. Currently, we do have some debug tools in place for
Not for Alpha
users.
2 users to use, though.
Well, we have our XYZ coordinate system in place that Alpha 2 users can activate through page down right now. You don't need to be a fluffy bunny to do that. We will have other A2 debug tools that will be in place by phase 1. I know that's currently planned.
When you do
Now,
/bug in the game, it will actually give us some of that information too automatically on our end.
absolutely.
So any of the information that we need to know in regards to like the location of
Yep.
where your bug is happening, that will be provided in there.
Absolutely. And then in addition, yes, we will have other features that will be available for debug commands that players will have access to that might spit out their log to us immediately. Right now, we have a reader on the log for the travel to world screen from the character creator or from the character stable that gives you information around your connection state. There will be a number of different debug tools that we'll have available,
Right.
and those will come online at different times during phase 1, 2, and 3.
Our next question here is from Rain Doan, who wants to know about population over time. What is the expected maximum amount of players that will be able to be in game across all realms at the start of Alpha 2, and how do you expect that to change over time?
Yeah, so right now when we think about the maximum number of players, so obviously we have CCU, which is concurrent users per realm. We have CCU across a region or cluster, and then we have our expected daily active users and monthly active users that we're aiming for. We have over 100,000 people that will be at the start of Alpha 2. We talked a little bit earlier about having 3,000 CCU, so any given time on a per realm basis to start. Our goal is to grow that as the design play space expands, as the as that moves forward from phase 1 to 2 and 3, eventually that 3K CCU will grow to 5K to 6K to 8K until it lands somewhere between 8 to 10,000 per realm. Now, when we talk about scalability for deploying multiple realms at a time, our solution right now, we feel pretty confident in that being able to stand up multiple realms as is necessary to facilitate a high concurrency of potentially multiple hundreds of thousands of users come Alpha 2.
All right. And our next one is about testing expectations from Blip. Do you want the testers to play the game as they normally would and find bugs that way, or will you have specific testings for our systems and features, like app requesting specific things? Or are we allowed to find weaknesses like exploits and hacks, reversing the client, and so forth?
Um,
Spicy one.
both, right? We definitely want players and testers to play the game as normally and find bugs. But at the same time, if players come across weaknesses or exploits or hacks, we want players to report that to us immediately. Now, there's a fine line between finding a exploit or a hack or some issue and utilizing that to a benefit or an advantage as opposed to reporting that to us. There will be a firm hand when it comes with dealing with people who are bad actors in the game. And just to speak to this, I talked a little bit about representing gamers as a community. There are those of you out there who are very technically savvy, that who are capable of putting to use your knowledge for good or for bad. And what I would ask of you is that if you care about the MMORPG genre, if you care about the hard work and persistence of hundreds of people that are working on this project, that you would use your powers for good, my friend. And that means that as you find these things, you report them to us, and we will reward you bountifully with people who come to us and are open about how they find issues with the game. And that I think is a good relationship between the developer and the players. But don't use it for bad. Don't take advantage of it. Don't cause problems with it.
And when they're
This
big
is
issue, like big exploitations or things like that, making sure that you kind of like message them privately to one of our community managers versus or through our CS or through our bug reporting tools, rather than like, posting on the forums and be like, hey, everybody, look at how you can exploit this thing, right? Because we will be looking at logs, we will be looking at data, we can see who's doing the bad things, and we will take action on those accounts. And we don't want to have to do that, right? We don't want to have to ban you from playing in the future or suspend you for a certain period of time. Like that is not our goal in the long run. We really want to work together with you guys to find those things.
faux show.
All right, ready for the next one?
Ready.
This is the spiciest one. I think we've talked about it a
Oh,
bit though. This is
spicy.
from Pirates, and they want to know about date expectations. We've provided a lot of dates here. How do you intend to comply with the dates that you present with this roadmap when it's been a challenge in the past for Intrepid?
Sure. So I'm going to answer this in two parts. The first part is, how do we intend to comply? I don't know that comply is the right word. I think that I would rephrase this in, how do you intend to hit your goals for the dates that you present? Because that's a little bit more representative of the context that we're trying to provide these dates within. These are dates that are goals. Okay. And so what that means is we're going to try to accomplish them with the way that we've been accomplishing our product development thus far, which is through a robust project management style that's accompanied through a hardworking, experienced, and knowledgeable production team that works with our veteran MMO developers who have made these games over the course of their careers of 25 plus years for many of them. And we're going to execute in a fashion that involves the use of the feedback systems that we've created with our community. That is how we intend to deliver upon our goals. Now, the second part of this question, which is basically, it has been a challenge in the past for Intrepid. this is a difficult game to make. I don't know if you know that, but this is one of the more complex MMOs that I personally have seen from a systems perspective, from a features perspective, from an intent to launch with content perspective. Um, you might ask yourselves, well, why are you trying to create an MMO as complex as Ashes of Creation and as with as much content as Ashes of Creation is trying to launch with? Um, the answer is because we believe the space needs that. We believe that the MMORPG genre is a prime genre for a product like this to come in and shake up this idea of what an MMO should be. And because we're trying to do something difficult, and that is a difficult task, we are going to have setbacks. We're going to have hurdles. As I said, we're going to fail. And the right attitude about failure is to embrace it and move past it and learn from it and not fail in the same way again. That is the importance of failure. It's not that we're not going to fail. It's that when we do, we're going to talk to you about it. We're going to level set about it. And we are going to make changes to avoid that particular failure again in the future. And so I think that's the important part in the relationship between community and developer, is to make sure that that understanding exists. So yeah, that's
It's a hard one too. I think a lot of, I mean, all of us in this chat have probably experienced a game that has launched at a time when it shouldn't have, right? It should have been given a little bit more time, a little bit more love. And so we are the arbiters of deciding whether that, hits or not. And I think Stephen is always of the mind that if we need more time, we will take more time to make sure that it is what it needs to
absolutely,
be. So just keeping
absolutely.
keeping that in mind. I know there's a flip side to both things. It's the like the excitement that you want something, but at the same time, it's kind of understanding the other side of it too. Is ensuring that it really is what you want.
And look,
Yeah.
I don't want to take more time to develop this game. I would love
He
to have
doesn't
this
want to take
game
more time
ready
or money.
tomorrow. I don't want to take more time and more money. I mean, yeah. Trust me, there is no objective closer and dearer to my heart than that truth. However, what I would say is that I will always be willing to eat crow. I don't want to have to do it. But if the product calls for me to do it, then I will come here and I will talk to you about why it happened.
And it's not fun to do that part,
And
but
it is not fun.
yeah.
It's not fun to do it.
Leave us. We don't want to do it either. Next one here is about employment logistics. And this is from Mr. Kawashima, and they want to know, given recent layoffs in the gaming industry attributed to rising development cost and kind of very fitting with that conversation that we just had, and industry shifts, what proactive measures is Intrepid Studios taking to mitigate similar financial pressures? Are there contingency plans in place to
Nice.
avoid workforce reduction while continuing the development of Ashes of Creation? I feel like one of our developers wrote this. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. I was
They're
gonna say.
like,
I
we
was
might
gonna
have a
say.
job
Wait a
forever.
minute.
No, I'm just kidding.
And this is a good segue too, as something that's near and dear to my heart with regards to the financing side of it. Obviously, it has been a little bit of a rough time for the industry over the course of the last year and a half ish. There's been a lot of layoffs, and I'm not going to deny the fact that um, that there is some silver lining to that truth within the industry for us as a company, us as a studio, us as a project, in the sense that we have been able to grow our ranks significantly over the course of the last year and a half, as you guys have witnessed, right? And those individuals who have joined this team are an incredibly and talented group of people. And when I think about what it takes for Intrepid to deliver upon this big promise that is Ashes of Creation, it takes those types of people and the quantities of people that we have working on this project. And that is an expensive endeavor. If I think about, we never really talk about finances for the company from a by the numbers perspective. And that's generally because we're not dependent on outside investors and publishers in order to deliver the game, right? And so it's important that, when we talk about what does it take to make Ashes of Creation? Well, to date, we've probably spent around 85 to 90 million dollars in the development and the creation of Ashes of Creation. And when we talk about, the distribution of that investment within the product, roughly, 30 million of that has come from pre-order sales and Kickstarter. So there is a significant personal interest in the success of this
Yeah. I
company
think people
and of
think
this
that
and of this
because they were a
product.
Kickstarter backer, they paid for like a big chunk of it. And it's like, oh no,
No, no,
homies.
no, 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 no,
But
no.
we've
No,
definitely,
no, no.
Steven has put in a lot of his
Right.
personal
So
money in
so
there.
just to be clear,
We appreciate
there
the
is
support though.
there is no greater interest and importance to the success of this team, of this product, than it means to myself and John. So when I think about how do we mitigate those financial pressures, we're in a unique position. As I said earlier, this is a unique story. Intrepid Studios. Intrepid Studios is a unique thing in the space of creating games. We not only do things differently from a financing perspective, we do things differently from a development perspective. We do things differently from a community engagement perspective. Because of how different we do things, it can be difficult to compare us to other teams or products as a result of that, because the parallel there is just not the same. Are there contingency plans to avoid workforce reductions while continuing the development of Ashes of Creation? The second part of this question. If it was necessary for us to engage with a foreign publisher for territories outside of North America and Europe, the quality of the product, I believe, in Alpha 2 is going to afford us that ability to do that engagement, right? That has the potential, when we think about, additional financing contingencies, for us to engage with. And of course, we're interested in potential publishers for some Asian territories and outside of Asia that we are going to be engaging with when the product is ready for that stage of engagement. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
I think the other side of this
Hopefully that
too is
answers your question.
I think the other side of this is how we also develop our product. So we try not to hire unless we need the role, like unless we know we
Oh
have work
yeah,
for that person to do. And in the cases where we have influxes of work, for instance, like, hey, we have a bunch of things that need to be done, but we won't need that work forever. We contract out some of that work,
absolutely,
right? Like we will
absolutely.
like, you hire me for 6 months and I do the thing, and then I'm like, so we're not we that person knows like their
And
job is to do that one thing and then they're gone. So it's not
and just
like you're hiring them and laying them off type of
and
situation.
just to add to that point, right? Sustainable growth has been a guiding principle of the studio over the course of development. So when you think about like, well, why is it taking so long to develop this game? We didn't start with 200 plus, full-time employees. We started with 6, and that grew to 12, and that grew to 20, and then it grew to 40, and then 60, and then like there has been a slow growth that is traditional with these types of projects as you move from a white paper phase to a pre-production phase to a production phase to QA phases. Like that is how growth works, right? When done correctly.
Right. Our next one here is about character creation. And this is from Balrog, and they want to know, can we get an update on when the character, we talked about this a little bit before, but this was the question that was there. Creation tool will be available. When does it launch? Presumably ahead of Alpha 2, because that's what we had stated previously. Will we have the option to reserve our names then? So kind of a two-parter. So
Two-parter. So we talked a little bit about the character creator, like as you said, it is going to be available, but as part of the client starting in phase 1. It's currently available now. Some people are getting some wonky results out of it as we do the bug fixes, but that's okay. Clayton's been doing a great job with that, as has the rest of the team. When it launches, presumably ahead of A2, will we have the option to reserve our names then? We will not have the option, I believe, to do the name reservations,
we're not going to do that
perhaps
through the
until
character creator.
Oh, no, we're not gonna do this with the character creator. I thought
Yeah.
this was a second question. Second
No, it
question
was
is
part of it.
name. Oh, okay, sorry. So it's not gonna be during character creator. We will get back to you on when name reservations will be available. We might try to see if we can get something in place by phase 3, but no guarantees there. It might not be until after.
Yeah, it might be more in the beta phases. For us, we don't really like you don't need the name reservation until launch really. But I
Right,
understand that some
exactly.
people want to have their name because they're streaming or whatever it might be as well. It is nice to have. All right. 1 second. Gotta get the next question on here. I was talking instead of prepping. I'm running the show
No
too.
worries. Oh, my bad.
the, the
I
next
can
one,
dance a jig. Do you need me to
no,
dance?
you're good. The
Oh,
next one
okay.
is from R2 Aruntelli, and they want to
R2D2?
know
Oh.
about node scope. What is the expected scope for the node features for launch of A2? And what have you scoped for later development? We kind of showed this a little bit, but
Yeah,
they wanted to know level range, racial aesthetics. We didn't really talk about that in there, so maybe you can compound on that. And then amounts of nodes, node types, superpowers, etc.
absolutely. So we talked a little bit earlier, and I'll allow the kind of content creators to help enumerate the specifics of phase 1, 2, and 3's intended features and content releases. Node level ranges, right? We talked about starting at node level 3 in phase 1 and having some 4 systems online and potentially moving then to 4 and 5 within the succeeding phases. Racial aesthetics. This is an important one. So a lot goes in from a development perspective with regards to creating these assets, right? With creating building assets and building sets, hero pieces and props and set dressing pieces for a node. So to start in phase 1, we will have the Kalar, the Kalar aesthetic available for the race. Now, it doesn't mean that other races won't be able to contribute to nodes. It means that when they do, it'll be populating it with the Kalar aesthetic. In phase 2 and in phase 3, predominantly in phase 3, is when you will start to see other racial aesthetics come online, starting with Veyloon, moving to Empyrean. A lot of that stuff is stuff that we are going to be hiring, as Margaret talked about, contractors or outsourcers to kind of help us augment production of these assets for phase 3. The amount of nodes that's going to be growing as the playable space expands. We talked about bringing on the additional territories and biomes and zones coming out of the Riverlands and moving north and towards the east. Those will come online with different nodes becoming available within those locations. It's going to try to feel as organic as possible. Again, the whole concept here is that you're the first settlers, the first wave of people coming into this world, and slowly you're going to grow out from this starting area and creating this world around you. And then we're going to be playing with the superpowers. We're going to be testing those and kind of landing on the types of design elements that we want to include as part of the superpowers. We've talked in the past about what those superpowers are. That'll be the first iteration of it, but I highly suspect that that is going to be a category that undergoes significant iteration. And also how node types interact with each other. And we talked up in the phase 1, 2, and 3 discussion
And
about the
Vaseline
different
too.
node types of when they'll come online. Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely, when we send out the article tomorrow with the larger images of everything, you can kind of get in there and check it out. But like everything says in there, subject to change. Keep that in mind. Those are our goals. The next question here is about player corruption, and this is from Dolvim, and they want to know how complete is the player corruption system currently, and what is the predicated timeline of the player corruption system development during Alpha 2?
Yeah, player corruption at the start of phase 1 will have the ability to gain corruption, the ability to kill the players and cause experience debt. the multiple types of experience debt modifiers that apply to corrupted or to combatant players. The timeline for additional player corruption system development. I believe actually there's stat dampening that's online as well for the corruption value and for the experience debt that's accrued. So it's fully functional in phase one.
All right. And the next one is about dueling. Will we get a duel system implemented for the start of Alpha 2 so we don't have to flag to practice PvP, risking getting corruption? And this is from Lineker.
The dueling system will not be online for the start of Alpha 2. Dueling will likely be a phase 3 feature. However, if you want to duel other players in the start of phase 1, it will likely be possible for you to do that in the lawless territories. However, you could get ganked in those locations. So be careful out there. It's a dangerous world.
All right. And then Hessus wants to know about our standout feature. As Alpha 2 launches, which feature or systems are you most confident will showcase the game's unique potential? And what aspects do you anticipate will require the most iteration based on player feedback?
I think that the feature and system that I'm most confident will showcase the game's unique potential. I think that as it relates to nodes and the dynamic world systems are the most unique element, from a gameplay perspective for Ashes, and probably our greatest focus on player feedback when it comes to Alpha 2. What is unique about that? I mean, it is the fact that you are in a sandbox and that sandbox reacts to the actions, not just of you individually, but you rhetorically as a community. That is something that serves a lot of different like world state predicates to inform spawners for population, to inform dungeons, to inform reward tables, to inform dialogue paths and story arcs. Like those are the things that I think are most interesting. From a from a visual perspective, I think seasons are probably going to be the most unique visual thing for players. Being in a single area and watching that area change drastically between seasons is something that is perhaps we're a bit foreign to when it comes to MMORPGs. Traditionally, those areas just are static. And I think that's going to be, and it's also tied into the dynamic world state. So I think that it's going to be something that's really interesting. What is going to require the most iteration based on player feedback? I think that I think systems like the caravan system. I think that systems like our archetype designs and ability designs perhaps are going to have a lot of iteration. Our weapon designs, I think those are going to have a lot of iteration.
All right. Moving on to the next one. World bosses. I saw someone in chat being like, when are they going to talk about PvE? We've definitely talked about PvE in this previous slides, but how many world bosses will we have access to in Alpha 2? And what are some of your favorites?
In phase 1 will be 3 world bosses. So phase 1, there will be 3 world bosses. And then we will be releasing additional world bosses in phase 2 and phase 3. Obviously, as the world expands and as those additional bosses come online. What are some of my favorites? I'm a dragon nerd. I've always been a dragon nerd. I have an awesome Dragon deck in Commander that I love to play that has just so many dragons in it. And we have a dragon. We have a dragon. We have a dragon. We have a dragon in Alpha 2, the Firebrand dragon, which actually I think we're going to be seeing this month.
Yeah, you will be.
Did we announce that?
No, I don't think we did, but now we did.
Uh-oh. Now we know. We're seeing
Now
a dragon.
The next question, and that was from Knife Party. Thank you, Knife Party. Moving on to Skylark, the botanist wants to know, a very fitting name for this question. about artisan professions. Which artisan professions will be available at the start of Alpha 2 and what tier progression will be available for those professions? And I know we talked about tier 3 in a previous
Um,
slide.
yeah, we talked about it earlier. All artisanship professions will be available at the start of A2 Phase 1. However, they will not have associated skill trees with them in Phase 1. That will come online in later phases that we talked about up above. All subject to change. And and what tiers of progression? They will have the first 3 tiers of progression available starting in Phase 1, particularly as it relates to predicates for tool access, resource gathering capabilities, and the certification quests.
All right, next one is about archetype updating. Will the tank and cleric get a bit of a rework to get them on the same page or same level of awesomeness like the ranger, fighter, and bard before Alpha 2 launches? And this is from PJDW. That's subjective, I guess.
No, it is a good read, I think. I think that is a good read. I would include mage in the tank and cleric part of this question. I think it's tank, cleric, and mage is currently on the docket for the PC team, the player character team, to kind of revamp, to bring up to par. What is happening?
We're getting raided
Oh
by
my
pirate
goodness.
software. Thank you, pirates.
Welcome, pirates. Please don't take my booty. Um, Booty's treasure, just to be clear. So,
HR.
oh no, HR. Yeah, I would say that there are definitely plans for us to rework them and bring them to the same level of awesomeness.
And the next
And by
one,
rework, I just mean expand and polish and yeah.
yeah. The next one here is about in-game support. Can you talk about general in-game support and support ticket process? For Alpha 2, for example, will there be human in-game GMs to assist with issues? And I think I'll probably take this one since
Sure,
I run that team.
get some.
So from our perspective, we will have people who will have access to being in-game and helping support if needs be. But our goal for Alpha 2 is we are not going to be assisting at the same capacity that we would be for launch. At launch, we do want to have in-game GMs. We do want to have support outside of that with our ticketing system. Right now, the main thing that we'll be helping with is account and billing issues. So if you have any of those or technical issues, like if you're having issues downloading or things like that, you can contact us, or access to this forum section or the Discord section. Those are things that we will be supporting on the CS side. So it will be kind of what you're used to currently, but also with some element of access gaming, like IT issues, and assisting you guys with that. As we expand and we get more tools for our customer service, we will be trying to test out those tools. So that would be things like in-game support for if your quest is broken or something like that, or something happens to an item down the line closer to betas. That's when we'll be supporting those things. But for Alpha 2, that will not be the case. So it'll be a little bit more slim for Alpha 2, but as we expand, we'll be hiring on more staff. We'll be doing more support. On the community front, though, we will be assisting you guys with in-game things and having a lot of fun with you and kind of assisting with questions and answers and stuff like that. So it'll be a little bit different for each of the phases as we expand and get more tools for our staff.
Faux show.
Yeah, but we do want to. It's just we gotta make sure that our focus right now is developing the game, not developing tools for our customer support. We actually have a lot of tools comparatively to. I've worked on a lot of projects, and usually CS has no tools until maybe post launch. So
Yeah, I was gonna say.
we're in a good space comparatively. But yeah. Next up is going to be studio culture, which this is what Cineris wants to know about. How do you guys feel about the practice of crunch? Do you think there's a possibility you will use this practice to get Alpha 2 release over the line?
Yes. So first, I would say from a studio culture perspective, that we have been a studio for the past 8.5 years. And that studio, as we said earlier, has grown significantly over that period of time and in a sustainable fashion. And over the course of 8.5 years, I can recall on one hand how many times that we have incorporated crunch for the team as a whole. Now, to be clear, I want to talk about the differences between what crunch is and what people who are passionate that take it upon themselves to work harder at their jobs, um, and pull additional hours because they want to get something done to surprise the team, or they ran into an issue but still want to execute on their sprint commitments, or whatever that might be. At times there is some heroics that happens, right? But that I don't associate with crunch. And always I believe that, and from a studio perspective, from a culture perspective, there is a very important component of work-life balance. I feel that mentally. I know that every single one of us, whether you're working in the game industry or not, you need time to detach, you need time to step away, you need time to refresh, you need time to recharge. And crunch is directly antithetical to that thought at times. Now, there have been a lot of awesome products in the past that have launched and did so with crunch. So crunching isn't necessarily something that prevents creating a good product, but it can be very detrimental to the retention of a team, the passion of a team, the good
Morale.
work of a team, the morale of the team. Exactly. All of those things. I will say to you that I view crunch as a failure of planning. I view it as the inability to either correctly identify scope of a particular feature or content request, the inability to identify dependencies, the inability to plan accordingly for resources, right? These are all reasons why crunch occurs. The hard fact and truth, unfortunately, about crunch is that sometimes the choice is either crunch or fail, and teams have to make a decision in weighing what failure means, because different types of failures mean different things, right? And currently the studio is in a phase of crunch. I am not proud of that. That is a direct reflection of myself, of the leadership of my studio, that we are in a state of crunch. That state of crunch will be ending in September. So are we leveraging crunch right now to get some features and content deliverables above water? Yes, we are. But we have done that 3 times in our 8.5-year history as a studio. And while I am not happy with the fact that we are crunching currently, it is something that we take very seriously and we do not incorporate as part of a culture of Intrepid Studios. And as a matter of fact, for those of you who might be watching that are in the industry or developers, when you think about a place to work, what does leadership view crunch as? That is an important question to ask, and I will tell you that that right now we have failed at arriving at this crunch scenario, but we are doing it because we as a collective group are very passionate about delivering something to our community and in the time frame that we have set forth. And so we do get some limited gains out of that right now, but it is not a long-term solution. It should never be a solution that is looked to as a plan. It is a worst case scenario contingency.
All right. Moving on from the soapbox. Stephen's
I know. I'm
philosophical.
sorry. I feel I was in a soapbox. That was me flogging myself. What are you talking about? The developers are watching. I have this,
Stephen's
I have the
sweating.
flog. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard one, but we're moving on to the next question here is about game rating. This is from Frost01. At the beginning of this project, you said that you were aiming for the game to be rated teen. Is that still the goal?
No, I believe that our game will be rated M for mature based on some of the narratives and content that we are implementing.
All right. Moving on to the next one. Gameplay loop. What is expected to be the primary gameplay loop during Alpha 2? Ooh. And that is from Rive.
So that primary gameplay loop is going to evolve a little bit over the phases, right? And we talked a little bit earlier about that. I won't necessarily rehash that. What are the focuses of those phases? But when I think about kind of a primary gameplay loop, I think about players having agency. I think about players influencing the world. I think about players reacting to dynamic world states. I think about players forging relationships. I think about friction between players. I think about rewards that are make or break, that are risky, that require community and collaboration in order to achieve. Um, those are the types of loops that we espouse in across a number of different features, right? So yeah.
All right. The next question here is about guilds. What guild systems will be at the start of Alpha 2?
I talked a little bit about this earlier. That's going to be the ability to create guilds, to invite players to guild, to kick players from guilds. That'll be in phase 1. In phase 2 and phase 3, we'll start implementing the abilities for guilds to gain levels, to collect experience, to do guild quests, and to invest in guild skills.
All right. And the final question from the pre-canned questions, then I have a few that I'm just going to grab from live chat and stuff like that that I have prepped from our wonderful community and social team. Live streams. Once Alpha 2 launches, will the monthly live streams be focused more on what is coming soon to Alpha 2 since we've already since we'll already be able to see what is currently available? And this is from Darth Aiden. And I'll kind of take this one a little bit. In regards to live streams post Alpha 2, we will be doing some really cool community oriented things. So we're going to be running some events that we'll probably pre-record and kind of share those experiences with you guys so that we don't get I've done some live events, so we may choose to do some live events, but what happens sometimes is everyone kind of like joins and it gets a little crazy as far as server realm crashes and things like that. So we may pull some people aside, bring some people in and involve them into some fun events. And we'll bring those events to all the servers, but we may just record and share parts of that. In regards to patch notes and kind of sharing information, we also plan to do some cool videos in regards to that and sharing that information with you guys so you can see what's up and coming through the pipeline, as well as kind of showcasing the stuff that is currently in Alpha 2. So it'll be a little bit different than what you've experienced in the past, but we'll still make a lot of fun. We'll still give you updates. We'll still take you along on this journey so you can see the game progress as it moves forward, but you're probably going to see it shift more to a very community oriented thing. We may even have some content creators being involved in some of those live streams. It's just going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be the most fun for my team because that's when we get to like interact with you guys the most and have you guys be part of it. Maybe we'll even show like some of the top plays from the experiences or what's going on with each of the realms and what nodes are progressing and who's doing what, who's taken over which castles, and kind of like sharing a lot of like more of the community oriented fun stuff that you kind of expect from a game whenever it's moving and grooving. Anything else you want to
Absolutely.
add on that front, Stephen?
No, I'm excited. The
Yeah.
team is excited. It is a moment of both joy, excitement, and anxiety, all wrapped up into one little cute bundle.
So I have 3 more questions that I want to ask, or
Yes.
4
Oh,
more,
my
I
bad.
think.
Okay. Yes.
One
Ask all the
is
questions.
it was said that Alpha 2 would run until launch. Uh,
Mhm.
and then we had stated that there may be an end date, so they're saying there is an end date question mark, and this kind of fits in line with the next one, which is what is going on with the PTR? Is Alpha 2 access going to then
Yes.
result in the PTR access, and how is that
Al-
going to work?
Alpha 2 is still intended to morph into the PTR. And if you have Alpha 2 access for any of the phases, you will have access to all subsequent Alpha 2 testing phases, which includes when it becomes the PTR. And Alpha 2 will run until the beta phases. Again, the idea is to take our content and feature release trains that we currently have internally and to now start moving that into a live service Alpha 2 as we see those updates come on that 6-week cadence. And yeah, hopefully that
So
answers your
it
question.
will run alongside with beta 1 and beta 2.
That's
So
correct.
when
Yes.
alpha 2 ends, beta 1 will start, and then you'll kind of see that phase that those realms will change it to be kind of more of like a testing realm that you can see content that's coming up the line. We may even ask people to join that to test things before
Yep.
it goes to the beta. are we going to NDA that during that phase, or would
There,
that all be accessible?
um, during those phases, as we move into betas, there will be NDA testing
The
for some of
PTR.
those.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Just want to set expectations on that front. Then the next one is, will you increase the maximum level cap from phase 1 through 3?
Yes, mainly in phase 3. So phase 3 is where level cap will start to rise.
And then someone asked, what happened to the monster coin and animal husbandry system? Are they planned for Alpha 2? And we did
Those
say
will be
animal
later.
husbandry, I thought, or those are,
Animal husbandry, I believe,
we
is in
brought up in
phase
phase
3
2.
or phase 2.
Yeah,
Is it
just the
phase 2? I
breeding
don't know.
part
I'm
would be there.
scrolling up.
I don't think it's
Yeah,
the full system.
anything that you see that's in phase 3 again pertains to the first few months of phase 3 beginning, and then after that, those additional systems will come online sometime between phase 3 and beta.
Yeah, I think monster coin wasn't on there, but animal husbandry was definitely on our list. And Steven, we made it. We made
Did
it
we
to
really?
yeah, we made it to the end.
Oh my God, we did it.
It's long. Thank you all so much
We did it.
for hanging with us. We know that we explained a lot of stuff here. There's a lot to go through. Like we said before, we will have the video up on YouTube for you pending tomorrow morning, hopefully, pending YouTube cooperates with us and Twitch cooperates with us. But we'll also have an article, and that article will be linked in the video, and it will be linked on our website, and that will have all of the slide pages so that you can like look at them in more depth if you want. Like we said before, though, just reiterating, and as those slides say, even on them, things are subject to change, but we are going to keep you informed of those changes. So as we get closer to Alpha 2 for phase 1, you are going to see some updates from us in regards to that. You'll see some articles that will come out, some videos that will come out, things along those lines that will kind of explain the guide to Alpha 2 at the start. And then as we have game updates, we'll be providing you with the information on what is in each of those game updates, whether that's patch notes for the 3-week one, or it's the big game update ones for the 6-week ones, but we'll definitely keep you all informed of what's coming down the line. What else do I want to make sure you guys are aware of? For the alpha key, or for the second wave, or first wave, second wave, and third wave key information, we will be providing more information on with an FAQ and an article next week in regards to that. So when that goes live on Wednesday, you'll have all of the information about that, as well as an FAQ, and we'll hopefully answer as much questions as possible in that, as we have done in the past with previous things that we've sold. So hopefully that will give everybody an understanding of everything. Please join us at the end of this month. We're going to have another development update for you. We would love for you guys to join us. And thank you
I
for
leaked
watching.
that it's going to be a dragon in that.
There's going to be a raid, so you might want to come check it out. For all of those people who love PvE, I mean, raiding is my big thing. I was telling a bunch of the community that like raiding and dungeons and like epic raid dungeons are like my favorite things. So again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for submitting all your questions. There was a lot for us to go to. Fortunately, when we were going through the questions, a lot of the questions were questions we were already answering in our deck, which means that we're on par with you guys. We are mind melding about what you guys want to see, and a lot of that was a lot of detail.
There is one thing I do want to clarify that I noticed a few commentaries
go
about.
for
I'm
it.
sorry, before we kind
I'm
of
gonna
finish
fix
this
the
up.
typos too before I post the article.
No worries. And by the way, I am going to spend some time tonight and this weekend in Discord, interacting with the community and perhaps answering some questions, a little ad hoc question sessions. So if there were some questions that you did not get answered here in the AMA, I will be joining, and I know Lex and the Ashes Wikis always does a great job in collecting that data and representing it there, and I'm sure content creators will be scouring through what I say over the weekend and be bringing to you some reviews
The wiki
with
guys are
some of those
probably, or
questions
guys and gals
answered.
are probably going crazy right now. They're like overdrive.
Absolutely, but I do
Go
want to
volunteer to
clarify.
help them.
I do want to clarify for those of you who are asking questions about the key sales, that phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 are the subsequent phases of the phase that you purchase at if you are choosing to be a tester, not to play a game. if you're choosing to be a tester, they do include the subsequent phases as well. They
Yeah.
are just keys for alpha. They do not include beta 1 or beta 2 or any other game time with them. And it is important to remember and to hit this home that you are participating in a test. You are not playing a game. It is very important as a community, as content creators, that we espouse that information. And then the other point is, gosh, I missed it. Actually, I lost where I was going to come. Oh, sorry. So purchasing phase 1 access. It lists phase 1 access as starting in the weekend of November, I think it's 8th. Is that
November
right?
8th, yeah.
Now, that means that only Alpha 2 key holders who have the pre-order packages that have purchased prior to these new keys being available, you will be the only ones who have access to the first and second weekends that are
For
October
October
25th
25th, yeah.
and November, I'm sorry, is it 3rd or 2nd?
I think it's more than, yeah, I think it might be more than 2.
Oh,
I
is
have to
it?
look at the calendar. I have everything closed
I know, I do too.
because I'm trying to not
And it's all so
ruin my
small.
internets.
I don't want to put my old man glasses on to look either. Here we go. Let me see here. The 25th and then the 1st. So it is 2 weekends.
Okay.
So those 2 weekends will be weekends that are not included as part of these new keys. These new keys are only phase 1 starting the weekend of the 8th, and then the week-long testing starting December 20th for phase 2. So keep that in mind.
That's good points. And of course, we will reiterate
Oh,
things. Yes, go ahead.
last thing, I'm so sorry.
No, go for it.
I also noticed the question here. Those new keys will begin their sale on, is it the 21st we said?
Yes.
So the 21st is when those keys will be available.
Yep. And we'll
And
have
the
an article
last
that goes over everything too with an
and
FAQ.
the super last thing I just want to reiterate one last time is everything we discussed here is potentially subject to change. We will be open and honest about why, if a thing changes, it changes. But just keep in mind that when it changes, we said it's possible it changed. So keep that in mind. Please make sure you guys share that with the rest of the community. We are here to iterate on what we're building, to test what we are playing with the players, and we will take that information and make the changes necessary as a result.
Yeah, and your feedback may dictate how we're changing things and how long it takes us to change those things. So yes, definitely, we'll keep you guys in the loop. Like we said, you'll be seeing a lot of communication coming from us, a lot more, especially because we're going to have updates and things coming every like 3 to 6 weeks. So expect that. Like we said before, this video will be up on our YouTube channel. It'll be on Twitch right after when we close down here. We will share things on all of our social channels. We implore you to come follow us in all of the places. We're Ashes of Creation everywhere. We post daily, almost daily, I would say, sometimes multiple times a day. So come check it out. Give us some love over there, retweet, share things. All of that goes a long way to helping us, have more eyes on what we're creating. And of course, we'll see you all at the end of the month for another good game development update.
Woo! We did it. Bye,
All
everybody.
right.